Recently, you may have been hearing a lot about the Willow Project, a controversial expansion to fossil fuel extraction in northern Alaska, north of the Arctic Circle. There has been differing information flying in from all directions when it comes to this project, so my goal is to clarify what the Willow Project is, why there's so much opposition to it, what this means for the future, and what you can do about it. The Willow Project is a proposed oil drilling project in Alaska that was approved by President Biden last week. Oil giant ConocoPhillips, which made $18.7 billion in profits last year, is behind this project. Over its 30-year operational lifetime, the Willow Project will extract 600 million barrels of crude oil, with a peak of around 180,000 barrels per day. The Willow Project's many negative effects have spurred rampant opposition. By the Biden administration's own estimates, the project will generate enough oil to release 9.2 million metric tons of carbon to the atmosphere, which is equivalent to adding 2 million gas-powered cars to the roads. The project's annual emissions are expected to be equivalent to the annual emissions of 76 coal-fired power plants. The Willow Project could produce more than twice the emissions than will be saved by all of the renewable energy projects planned for public lands by 2030. This is not the time to expand oil production. With climate change worsening every year, we need to stop fossil fuel production, not expand it. The International Energy Agency, an autonomous intergovernmental organization that provides policy recommendations for all things energy, has said that governments must stop approving new oil, gas, and coal projects to avoid the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. Another huge issue with the project is its impact on the environment. This project would turn acres of vast, undeveloped wilderness into a network of pipelines and oil wells, complemented by a central processing plant, a gravel mine, and an airport. Destroying this area will have terrible consequences for the local environment and the native groups that depend on it. For example, the Willow Project land is part of the birthing grounds for the Teshekpuk Lake caribou herd, which is 60,000 caribou strong. This development will greatly harm the caribou, which will then harm the native communities that depend on these caribou for food. The area is also home to polar bears, seals, foxes, shorebirds, and more. Northern Alaska is truly special, and Willow will ruin this wonder. Increased light, noise, and chemical pollution will also exacerbate many of these environmental issues. And additionally, the development is projected to lead to higher levels of pollution and toxins that can cause diseases such as asthma and cancer in the local indigenous communities. Nationwide, the Willow Project pits those opposed to environmental destruction and climate change against those focused on personal economic gain. In Alaska, this traditional battle is more complicated. The majority of Alaskan residents, including some native groups, actually support the Willow Project because of the Alaska Permanent Fund, or APF. The APF is an annual payment that allows Alaskans to share in a portion of the state minerals revenue. Basically, some of the profits from mineral extraction go back to individual Alaskans. In 2022, every Alaskan received $3,284, which was raised mainly from oil profits. Expanding oil extraction in Alaska has the potential to raise the amount of money in this fund, leading many Alaskans to support sacrificing part of their state far away from where they live to get more money. Out of sight, out of mind. You can see this disparity when you look at where support for the Willow Project comes from in Alaska. The native groups that will be drastically impacted by the project have fiercely fought it in order to save their livelihoods, while people far away from the project and its many negative consequences are all for it. The mayor of Nuiqsut, a predominantly indigenous city that will be greatly impacted by the project, explained this simply in a letter to Department of the Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, saying that the village would bear the brunt of the health and environmental impacts from Willow, while other, quote, villages get some financial benefits from oil and gas activity, but experience far fewer impacts. We are at ground zero for the industrialization of the Arctic, unquote. It's also important to note that Alaskan politicians benefit from rampant oil extraction in their state. The Alaskan representatives in Congress, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, have all come out in support of the Willow Project. But according to the nonprofit Open Secrets, which tracks campaign contributions in Congress, These 3 Congress members received a combined $438,000 from oil interests for their 2022 congressional campaigns. Since these politicians' campaigns are bankrolled by oil companies, they are more likely to support oil interests like Willow. There are a variety of other arguments in support of the project, which I will attempt to explain and debunk. Firstly, the state's lawmakers say the project will create jobs, boost domestic energy production, and lessen the country's reliance on foreign oil. It is necessary to remember that these are all also done by increasing renewable energy production, which doesn't kill the planet. Additionally, environmental groups and native tribes, including those in Nuiqsut, have countered the job creation and economic claims by explaining that any jobs and money the project brings in the short term will be negated by the environmental devastation in the long term. Another argument for the project is that it will lower gas prices. Firstly, this project is not expected to be operational for 6 years, since they have to build all of the infrastructure from scratch. Next, the price of oil is the main contributor to gas prices. Because oil companies have a lot of control over oil prices, opening up a new oil project doesn't automatically lead to lower gas prices. This was seen last year when gas prices were at record highs while oil companies made record profits. Here's a quick reminder that ConocoPhillips, the oil company behind the Willow Project, made $18.7 billion in profits last year. Opening up new oil projects only increases our reliance on this faulty system. Another argument is that if the federal government had not allowed the Willow Project to go through, it would have been a breach of contract, since ConocoPhillips had existing lease rights. Basically, ConocoPhillips and the federal government made an agreement 20 years ago enabling ConocoPhillips to drill. If the federal government had pulled out of this agreement by not going through with Willow, it could have been liable for compensation for the investments ConocoPhillips has already made for the project. This sounds like a big deal. Of course, we don't want the federal government to be paying an oil company to keep them from drilling, but this is still the much better option. In the long run, the cost of the Willow Project's environmental damages and contributions to climate change will far outweigh what the government might have paid to stop the project. This leads into my next section about how we're supposed to balance Biden's environmental contributions with his continued destruction of the same environment. On the campaign trail, Biden promised no more drilling on federal lands, period. And one of his first actions as president was an executive order that stopped drilling on federal lands. However, the drilling pause was later struck down by a federal judge, and since then the Biden administration has opened up several areas for new drilling. As for Willow, while he approved it, he only approved 3 drilling sites instead of the 5 proposed, though these 3 sites will produce 92% of the oil that ConocoPhillips initially sought to develop. To lessen the impacts of the Willow Project, Biden also announced that he will declare the entire U.S. Arctic Ocean off limits to future oil and gas leasing, and will announce new rules to protect from drilling over 13 million acres from the Federal National Petroleum Reserve, which the Willow Project is a part of. While this is good, it does not do nearly enough to outweigh the terrible impacts of Willow. In fact, he should be doing this anyway. This project greatly undermines the environmental progress of the Inflation Reduction Act. Environmental group Earth Justice's president summarized this well, saying, quote, "We are too late in the climate crisis to approve massive oil and gas projects that directly undermine the new clean economy that the Biden administration committed to advancing," unquote. Look, Biden has done a lot of good for the environment, from stopping the Keystone XL pipeline to passing the Inflation Reduction Act. But he has also done a lot of bad things for it, such as approving the Willow Project. This is why it is so important to do more than vote for environmentally conscious candidates and then wait 2 years for the next election. We need to constantly pressure our leaders to protect our planet if we want to see positive change. So please stay updated on environmental issues and speak out when you have the chance. For example, with Willow, there was a massive push to get people to speak out. Over 2 million people signed petitions to stop the project, and grassroots organizations across the nation worked to get the word out. While it didn't work this time, it works sometimes. And the fight to stop the Willow Project isn't over yet. Environmental groups Earth Justice and the National Resources Defense Council have sued on environmental grounds to stop the project. Additionally, there are still active petitions to stop the Willow Project, and you can call the White House and Department of the Interior comment lines to voice your support for stopping this project. There are resources linked in the description of this video to help you do this. Additionally, if you want to get more involved in the movement, I highly recommend joining a local grassroots group. Environmental organizations such as 350.org, the Sunrise Movement, Extinction Rebellion, the Climate Action Network, and others have local groups that do great work and need volunteers. We don't have much time left to stop climate change, but we know what we need to do to stop it, so we must work as hard as we can to create the change the world needs.